Hello, everybody. It's George from Ireland. So, welcome back to my channel once again. And this is spreading the joyous tidings that the United States has signaled its intention. Hello, everybody. I don't know if you missed that. Seemed to have cut off the beginning of my video. It's George from Ireland. Welcome back to the channel once more. And this is a video commenting on the fact the United States has signaled its willingness to give F-16s to the Ukrainians. And indeed, plenty of America's NATO allies also have F-16s. Ukrainian pilots have been trained on these for about 6 months now. Now, to be really considered an operational pilot, be trained for much longer, and it's about 2 years. By the way, as I've often said, I'm not a military person, and I don't know anything about the technical specifications of these warplanes. But just as a general reader, dipped into a few things. So this is quite a big move. I'm reluctant to say massive. That might be overstating it, because Russia has always had a significant advantage in air power. They actually had air superiority. Might be overstating it, but the Russian Air Force outnumbered the Ukrainian Air Force 10 to 1. At the beginning of the conflict, Ukraine's Air Force was all Soviet era aircraft. And Russia had obviously their own aircraft, their own manufacturer. I don't think they bought any foreign aircraft, but some of them were made only a few years ago. And Putin has been beefing up the Russian military since 2007. From 1991 to 2007, they got almost no new equipment because the economy was that bad. And so he's been preparing for this invasion for a long time. So people have been lobbying, and the Ukrainians have been pleading these planes for a very long time, and they're finally going to get them. And some of the pilots are trained. So this is a really big thing. Now, the White House has not actually said this in a conference. It's been leaked by various American officials to CNN and others, but it's not been denied by the White House, put it that way. So, the United States approved the transfer of instruction materials from Denmark to Ukraine. The Danes have been training them, various other NATO allies. The Dutch have been training them. So a lot of these planes have been made. It's like over 4,000 F-16s have been manufactured since they were invented in the early 70s. Now, not all of this is still operational. Some of them passed their service lives. A very few crashed. I believe only 2 have ever been shot down in combat. So 11 countries have been training them. The United Kingdom is not one of them. I think the UK doesn't actually possess any. Anyway, so that's the Biden administration is saying that. So, I mean, it's fantastic, but obviously it just comes far too late. Had they been given F-16s this long ago, this war might never have been started. And so that's how you can get peace through strength, through deterrence, through showing the Russians that, no, you just can't going to do this. A thug is going to attack a little old lady. He's not going to attack a heavyweight boxer, because he'd be scared off, back off, we've got this. So, as I've often said, the Russians threw everything they had at the Ukrainians. They could have annihilated the Ukrainian Air Force on day one, but they didn't. They've been relatively restrained. The Ukrainians are also cunning, moved to old disused airfields, even landed on roads if necessary. They've received more Soviet-type aircraft gifted them from Poland, Slovakia, and Bulgaria. They're going to be backfilled by more modern aircraft in the United States. None of these countries have to purchase that. But there are an awful lot of F-16s around. There's something like over 3,000 F-16s in the world. The great majority of those are in NATO hands. Now, if even a tenth of those were given to Ukraine, that'd be a huge boost to their aircraft, of the Air Force. They've got roughly 300 aircraft, and the Russians have got roughly 3,000. The Russians haven't even lost that many in this war, maybe a bit over 100. I mean, obviously, if you're including helicopters, it's rather more than that. Anyway, this is seen as a fourth generation fighter. Is faster than the MiGs, the Soviet era, or the Russian equivalents. Obviously, some of those were manufactured well after the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. The geopolitical disaster of the 20th century, as Putin thinks. So not the Second World War, not the Holocaust, or anything like that. It was people actually getting freedom. It was democracy. It was human rights. It was independence for oppressed peoples. That was the disaster when they closed the slave labor camps, when they closed the torture chambers. Really bad news, Vladimir, wasn't it? Anyway, so they're going to be able to get them probably by the end of this year. Just a few, not huge numbers, but the Ukrainian Air Force, they're kind of damping down expectations that it's going to be transformative in the short term. In the longer term, it's going to be great. But they've been rushed through training, and they've been taught in English and so on. So almost everything's in English, but most of their Air Force pilots speak English. I don't know if they can be translated into Ukrainian. Well, I don't see why not, actually. And there's an Alpha Jet in France, which is their advanced trainer. They're being used that as well. Okay. Anyway, so any advantage that the Russians have in the air is going to be negated, because it's been one of the major problems for the Ukrainian counteroffensive is they don't have sufficient air cover. If they go forward too much, they can be hit by the Russian Air Force. And Putin, in some ways, he's too circumspect. In other ways, he's too rash, because he didn't bet the bank on winning this war, which he could have won by now had he gambled a bit more heavily with the Air Force and perhaps a few other things. On the other hand, he didn't have sufficient superiority in ground forces, so they've held back, and the Ukrainians gaining the upper hand in some ways in technology, in better artillery, taking out more and more Russian artillery at a faster rate than the Russians can build more, not being able to purchase very much from Iran or North Korea. It's a really good news, but it's too late. It should have come a very long time. They've dithered. Now, no doubt Moscow will say, "Oh, this is an escalatory step." Well, what are you going to do about it? Because they've complained about anything. And I said, if we gave them water pistols, they would say that was escalatory. The invasion of Ukraine, that's not escalatory. The the murder of people in the United Kingdom, that's not escalatory, including British citizens. The attempted murder of a Ukrainian president in 2004 with poison, Viktor Yushchenko, that wasn't escalatory, and so on. Bellicose rhetoric towards Moldova, that's not escalatory. And talk about using nuclear first strike, that's not escalatory, but allowing this democracy to defend itself from this act of unprovoked and illegal aggression, that is somehow escalatory. Now, no doubt there'll be caveats with this. It'll be handled with a proviso. It can't be used in Russia itself. It can only be used in Ukraine to drive out the Russian forces. But I don't see that changing. And another thing today is that drone near Moscow that caused all 4 major civilian airports in Moscow to shut, only for under an hour. Now, previously, only Vnukovo in the southwest of the city has closed down because, not allowing any aircraft movements because of a loitering Ukrainian drone. Because if it hit an aircraft, that could crash the aircraft, that could be up to 300 passengers dead. The plane itself worth over $100 million, huge reputational damage. But for the first time, it's not just Vnukovo, it's Sheremetyevo, Domodedovo, and the other one out to the east, I forget what it's called. So why did they was it going between them or something like that? Or I don't know. So major aircraft disruption, and I think there'll probably be more of that right at the end of the month, because Russian schools start 1st of September, sometimes even that's the weekend. So as people are coming back for summer holidays, and that will create chaos with air traffic control. And so planes due to land had to be diverted to Voronezh or Pulkovo Airport in St. Petersburg or wherever, and planes, you delay takeoff by an hour, which has a knock-on effect on flights for the next 24 hours or something like that. And although Moscow's got 10% of the Russian population, it's got about 40% of its aircraft movements, partly because it's a hub, but also because the money is very much concentrated there. So that's why more airlines might say, we're just not going to fly in and out of there. So they didn't kill anybody, didn't really do any damage. It was shot down and crashed into some expo center. It's caused disruption. You think of the money that's cost, but is it maybe a cheap Bayraktar drone, which cost you just a few $1 million? They're of Turkish manufacture. So more headaches for them. Right. Thank you so much for watching the channel. So please subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79 @gmail.com. Toodaloo.